Welcome to episode 4 of What You Don't See About Me as a Parent. This one is called The Small Steps I Celebrate. Now let me be clear at the very beginning. This episode is not just for parents. It's for teachers, for SNAs, for residential care staff, for anyone who works in schools, centers, or even churches. Because what I've learned in my own home raising my daughter, the hard lessons, the tears, the breakthroughs, those are the same lessons I bring into the classroom every single day. That's the gift and sometimes the burden of being both a mother and a teacher in the world of autism. I have seen it from both sides. I have been the overwhelmed parent who wanted to give in just to keep the peace, and I've been the teacher who has to stand firm and say, no, this boundary stays, because it's shaping who you'll be in 10 years. When I look at my class now, I celebrate the small wins, because I know where those small wins lead. And when I look at my daughter at 19, studying animation in university, independent, responsible, even helping her siblings, I know she didn't get there by chance. She got there because we fought through the small things. And let me tell you, it's the exact same in school. I'll see my SNAs look at me in disbelief when I praise a child for giving eye contact for half a second. But Shireen, he's still having meltdowns. He's still flipping tables. And I'll say, stop. Look closely. How many chairs did he flip today compared to yesterday? How long did that meltdown last? What language didn't he use this time? That is progress. Parents need to hear the same thing. Staff need to hear the same thing. You cannot wait until a child is perfect to celebrate them. You have to celebrate along the way. That's what builds trust. That's what builds connection. That's what lays the foundation for independence. And here's the truth. This principle of celebrating small steps, I didn't first learn it in a classroom. I learned it in my kitchen. I learned it in my bathroom with towels. I learned it at the shopping center when people stared at me while my daughter screamed on the floor. I learned it in my living room when she refused PECS, when she refused to eat, when I cried in the bathroom after holding firm through a meltdown. Those small daily battles became small daily victories. And here's where faith grounds me. In Zechariah 4 verse 10 it says, do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. God himself rejoices at beginnings. If God can celebrate the start, why do we as parents and teachers wait until it's finished? So in this episode, I want to link my story as a parent with my role as a teacher. I want to show you how what I learned at home, sometimes the hard way, became strategies in the classroom. And I want to speak to teachers, SNAs, residential staff directly. You have to see this. This is why I celebrate small steps, not because they're easy, not because they feel glamorous, but because they are the bricks that built my daughter's future. And I want you to learn how to see them in your own child's journey, whether at home or in the classroom. When I think back to my early years as a parent, what I remember most isn't the big milestones. It's not the birthdays or the school events. It's the tiny, exhausting, sometimes heartbreaking steps that nobody else saw. Those were the steps that shaped my daughter's independence. And let me be honest with you, I resisted many of them at first. Take PECS for example. When the speech and language therapist at the Central Remedial Clinic which is the CRC, recommended it, I almost felt insulted. My daughter had spoken before. She had said mommy, she had said daddy. So in my mind, giving her PECS felt like admitting defeat. It felt like we were cementing her silence. I thought to myself, why would I give her a picture card when I know she can talk? Isn't that just enabling her not to? But the therapist asked me to do something very hard. Trust her. And that brought me face to face with something I had already said in episode 3. If you hadn't listened to that one yet, pause here, go back and listen. Because in episode 3, I admitted this. We were willing to learn. We were willing to leave pride behind. We were willing to let go of our feelings and focus on our child's future. So we started PECS. We got the binder, the folder, laminated the pictures, organized everything neatly. But here's the challenge. My daughter refused to use it. Why? Because she didn't need it. She controlled our entire household. She already had access to everything she wanted. Food, toys, the remote control, clothes, without asking. She didn't have to communicate with us. She didn't need us. So we had to do something drastic. And this is where it gets really real. We rearranged the entire house. We locked cupboards. We moved food and items out of reach. We created roadblocks where there had been free access. It felt cruel. It felt unnatural. But we knew what we were doing. We were taking back control so that she could have to come to us. She would have to engage. She would have to communicate. And oh, the meltdowns. Parents, you know what I'm talking about. The wailing, the screaming, doors slamming, food thrown to the ground, full meals tipped into the bin, cupboard doors broken, and the worst part? Watching your child refuse to eat food for hours rather than simply ask for it. I'll be honest, there were days I broke. There were nights I cried in the bathroom. There were times I gave in. And every time I did, the next battle became harder because she had learned something dangerous. If I push hard enough, mom will break. So she pushed harder. She cried louder. She acted as though she was choking, and I stood there feeling like the worst mother on earth. But my husband and I held firm. We reminded ourselves daily, this isn't about us, it's about our future. And then, the breakthrough. Within 6 months of starting PECS, my daughter started speaking again. Not less, more. Words turned into sentences, sentence turned into reading out loud. She began using language to connect, not just with us, but with others. She began building friendship. I had to go back to that therapist and apologize. I had been wrong. My pride had blinded me. PECS didn't silence her. It gave her voice back. Parents, this is the part where I need to talk to you directly. Your feelings are real. The shame, the defensiveness, the fear. I've been there. I know how much it hurts to feel like your child isn't where you imagined they would be. I know how painful it is when a professional points out what you don't want to admit. But please hear me. This is not about you. It's about your child's survival, their dignity, their independence. Too many parents stay trapped in their feelings. They hold on to pride. They reject strategies that could help because it hurts to admit something isn't working. And in the short term, that protects your feelings. But in the long term, it cripples your child. Regret is heavier than humility. 10 years from now, when your child is older and struggling to function, you don't want to be the parents whispering, "If only I had listened. If only I hadn't dismissed the truth. If only I had acted sooner." And this is why I celebrate the small steps. The first PECS card she used. The first time she accepted a new food. The first time she respected a choice that wasn't her own. Because each of those steps felt like nothing in the moment, but looking back, they were the foundation stones of independence. Let me remind you, this is the same girl who controlled our towels, our shopping trips, our dinners, our daily routines. At 5 years old, she ran our house. But today, she's 19, studying animation at university. She goes to work. She shops for her siblings. She manages her responsibilities. She is becoming the woman God created her to be. Why? Because we learned to stand firm. Because we were willing to take correction. Because we embraced small, daily triumphs, even when they cost us tears. Parents, listen to me. Don't despise the small things. Don't dismiss the little steps. Because one day, those steps will be the very thing that allows your child to stand tall. When I step into my classroom, I don't just step in as a teacher. I step in as a parent who has lived through meltdowns, refusals, broken cupboards, and late night tears. I carry my story with me in every lesson, and because of that, I see things differently. Where another teacher might see a violent child, I see a child communicating in the only way they know how. Where someone else might see defiance, I see fear. Where others see impossible, I see possibility. That perspective doesn't come from a textbook. It comes from surviving it in my own home with my own daughter, and then watching God take those same lessons and use them in my classroom to help other families. I'll never forget one student who came to me on the verge of expulsion. He was violent. He destroyed classrooms. He frightened other children. Children left the school because of him. Staff whispered that there was no hope. And truthfully, there were days I almost believed it too. Because when you are the one cleaning up broken furniture, dodging chairs, and trying to calm down other terrified children while also protecting yourself from being bitten or kicked, it wears you down. But I don't see hopelessness. I saw a child in pain. So I started with the smallest steps. The first time he reduced a 2 hour meltdown to just 1 hour and 40 minutes, I praised him like he had won a marathon. The first time he flipped fewer tables, I told him, "Look, you only flipped 3 today, not 10. That's progress." That sounds almost silly if you have never lived it. But in a special needs classroom, that is what progress looks like. That's what we cling to. And slowly, he began to trust me. He began to regulate. He began to notice that I was not giving up on him. And today, he's moving back into mainstream classes, subject by subject. But not because I'm some miracle worker. It's because consistency, praise, and boundaries over and over build trust. This trust was built over 2.5 years. And trust allows change. It is not something that happens overnight. Sometimes it takes years. Teachers, let me say this very clearly. Celebrate the reduction, not just the removal. Don't wait until the behavior disappears to see progress. Notice the moments when the storm calms faster. Notice when the intensity is less. Those are victories, and when you celebrate them, you multiply them. I am fierce about protecting my students' dignity. And when a child melts down, I do not allow staff to gossip about it in the staff room. I remind my SNAs, what happens in this class stays in this class. Because children may lose control, but they did not lose their dignity. And when we treat them with dignity, they learn to trust us. Trust builds connection, and connection is what makes regulation possible. Let me give you an example. I had two SNAs in my room recently who started arguing with each other while a child was in a meltdown. I asked them both to leave the classroom immediately in front of the children. I asked them to walk out. And do you know what happened? The children thanked me. They actually said, "Thanks, miss." Can you imagine? They noticed that I protected the atmosphere of the room. They felt the safety of me saying, "We don't argue here. We don't embarrass each other here." These kids who the world writes off as not noticing anything, notice everything. They notice respect. They notice tone. They notice dignity. And when they see you protect it, they begin to mirror it. I am relentless with praise, not empty praise, but specific, intentional praise. You didn't hit me as hard today. You lasted 20 minutes longer before your meltdown. You picked up the pencil. That's amazing. You waited instead of running. That's progress. To an outsider, this sounds ridiculous. But I know what it takes for a child with autism or trauma to achieve that. I know the amount of inner effort behind a child holding back one hit, or waiting for one extra minute, or tolerating one new boundary. And I refuse to let those efforts go unnoticed. Because here's the truth. What you celebrate, you strengthen. If you ignore small wins, you crush hope. But if you celebrate them, even the tiniest step forward, children begin to believe they can do more. Sometimes my SNAs looked at me like I'm crazy. They said, "Oh, Shireen, he's still hitting, he's running, he's still shouting." And I point them back to the data. Look again. It used to be 100 hits a day, now it's 50. And look at the force, half of what it was. Look at the tantrum time, down from 2 hours to 30 minutes. Can you see it now? And when they see it, everything changes. They shift from despair to hope. They start working with the child instead of against them. That's what small wins do. They don't just transform children. They transform teachers, SNAs, carers, everyone. One of the first things I insist on in my classroom is respect. If I call a child and they shout back, "What?" I don't ignore it. I stop everything. I say, "That's not respect. Try again." And I wait until they respond properly. "Yes, miss," or "Yes, teacher," or "Yes, Miss Shireen." Because if they can learn respect in the classroom, they can carry it into life. And if I don't teach them now, they will struggle in every workplace, in every friendship, in every relationship. Respect is not optional. It's survival. And the only way I can demand it from them is if I also model it to them. I never belittle my students. I don't shout at them in anger. If they called me, I respond respectfully. Yes, John. Yes, Mary. Because I can't teach what I don't live. One of my boys was famous for flipping tables, entire classrooms destroyed. And every time, we had to evacuate the rest of the children. It would take hours to calm him down. But over time, it shifted. Now, when he flips a table, I say, well done. It only took 10 minutes to calm down this time. That's progress. I give him a timer and I say, you have 10 minutes to put this classroom back together. If you do, you still get your reward. If you don't, you lose it. It's your choice. And do you know what? He fixes it every single time. That's regulation. That's independence. That's triumph. Not because he stopped flipping altogether, but because he's learning self-control in the middle of the storm. I'll be honest, some of my students have humbled me more than any professional ever has. I remember teaching something one day, and one of my boys raised his hand and said, Miss, that's wrong. And he was right. I had made a mistake. Do you know what I said? I stopped, I smiled, and I said, thank you. You are so smart. You just corrected me. Well done. And the pride on his face lit up the room. If I had snapped back, if I had insisted on being right just because I was a teacher, I would have crushed that moment. Instead, I gave him confidence. And that confidence rippled into his work, his relationship, his willingness to try again the next day. Teachers, listen. It is not weakness to admit you don't know everything. It is strength. It models humility. It shows children that learning is for all of us. I won't sugarcoat it. Teaching children with intense needs is hard. It's exhausting. It's bruising. My body carries scars from this work. My ribs were fractured by a child. My chest has permanent pain from another injury. But I also know this. God has placed me here for a reason. When I feel like giving up, I reminded myself that these are His children first. He sees them. He loves them. He has plans for them. And He has trusted me to steward their journey for this season. That perspective keeps me going when my body and mind are worn out. Because I know the small steps are not wasted. They are seen. They are part of a bigger story. And one day, when these children walk into adulthood stronger, calmer, more independent because of the seeds we planted, I will know every bruise, every tear, every prayer was worth it. I would tell my staff this all the time. Progress is really dramatic. It's almost always hidden in the small details. A shorter tantrum, a softer hit, a child waiting 30 seconds longer, a respectful yes instead of a defiant what, a child who used to destroy everything now stopping himself halfway. These are not just behaviors. These are building blocks. They are evidence that the brain is rewiring, that the child is learning to cope, that hope is possible. And if we don't see them, we will miss the miracle happening right in front of us. So when I look at my class after 2 or 3 years of blood, sweat, and prayer, and I see them calmer, kinder, more regulated, more independent, I celebrate. Not because it was easy, not because it happened overnight, but because every small win built the future they are now stepping into. And teachers, SNAs, parents, let me remind you, those small wins are worth celebrating. They are the difference between despair and hope, between the chaos and calm, between dependence and independence. That's why I celebrate them. That's why I point them out, even when no one else sees them. And that's why I will keep doing this work, even when it costs me, because I know the fruit it will bear. When I look back over my journey, one of the biggest lessons I've learned as a parent and as a teacher is this: children strive when home and school work together. It sounds simple, but let me tell you, in practice, it's one of the hardest things to achieve because parents are tired, teachers are stretched, SNAs are burnt out, and everyone in their own way is fighting a battle that others don't always see. But if there's one thing that has made the biggest difference for my daughter and for the children in my classroom, it's when we have managed to bridge that gap. When parents and teachers stepped into partnership instead of pointing fingers. As a parent, I know what it's like to sit in the meetings and feel judged. To feel like every meltdown is a reflection of your parenting. To feel defensive because people are suggesting strategies that sound impossible in the chaos of your own. As a teacher, I also know what it's like to see a child every day in school and wonder why the parent doesn't follow through at home. To feel frustrated because the strategies we're putting in place in the class seem to unravel as soon as the child goes home. Both sides feel misunderstood. Both sides feel unseen. But here's the truth: we are looking at the same child, just through different windows. Parents see the meltdowns at bedtimes, the refusal to eat, the endless fights over routines. Teachers see the classroom avoidance, the violent outbursts, the refusal to write, but it's the same child, the same needs, the same potential. And when we realize that, when we stop fighting each other and start working together, the child benefits every time. Let me take you back to when my daughter was little. At home, we were drowning. Meltdowns, yellow towels, food refusals, slam cupboards, you name it, we had it. At school, she was getting expelled, left, right, and center. 3 preschool in a row kicked her out. If the teachers had just judged me or if I had just blamed them, nothing would have changed. But then came Early Bird. Then came the CRC. Then came professionals who didn't just point fingers. They showed us strategies. They worked alongside us. And they reminded us that small wins matter. And when we started to actually follow through at home, and when teachers started to echo the same strategies at school, she made progress. Fast forward to now, she's 19, studying animation at university dependent, contributing to our family, helping her sister, going to work. That didn't happen overnight. It happened because we learned how to work together. As a teacher now, I bring that same principle in my class. I sat with parents who don't want to hear about PECS, who think visuals are babyish, who cry when we suggest new approaches. And instead of judging, I say, I was you. I fought this too. Let me tell you what happened when I trusted the process. That honesty breaks down walls because I'm not just speaking as a professional with a degree. I am speaking as a mother who cried in the bathroom after holding firm during a meltdown. I'm speaking as someone who knows what it costs to follow through at home. And parents listen differently when they know you have walked in their shoes. Sometimes teachers think parents don't care. And sometimes parents think teachers don't understand. But let me tell you, we need each other. Teachers see the child in a structured environment, learning alongside peers, facing academic challenges. Parents see the child in their rawest form, tired, hungry, overwhelmed, unmasked. Neither view is complete on its own. Put them together and you get the full picture. That's why communication matters. That's why honesty matters. That's why teamwork matters. I've shared before about how I resisted PECS at first. I thought it would stop my daughter from speaking. I fought it. I cried over it. But once I gave in, once I implemented it properly, not halfway, not on my terms, but as it was designed, it changed everything. Now, as a teacher, I use that story to help parents understand why consistency matters. If a child uses PECS at school but not at home, progress slows. If a child uses it at home but not at school, progress stalls. But when both environments reinforce it, suddenly communication blossoms. That's teamwork. That's the bridge. I also remind my SNAs parents are not the enemy. Yes, sometimes they resist. Yes, sometimes they don't follow through. But you don't know what their home looks like. You don't know the trauma, the exhaustion, the depression, the loneliness. Instead of criticizing, we need to encourage. Instead of saying, "Why aren't you doing this?" we can say, "Here is one small thing you can try this week. Let's celebrate it when you do." Because just like children need small wins, parents do too. I can't talk about this without talking about God. Because honestly, there were days I wanted to give up. Days I didn't want to try another strategy. Days I didn't want to be hit or kicked one more time in my classroom. And on those days, I had to pray, "Lord, give me strength. Remind me this child is yours. Remind me you love them more than I ever could." That faith carried me as a parent and it carries me as a teacher. And I tell parents and staff the same. You cannot do this on your own. You need God's strength. You need His patience. You need His wisdom because these children will stretch you beyond your own limits. But the beauty is, that's where grace meets you, right at the end of yourself. So, how do we actually do this? How do we move from theory to practice? Let me give you some strategies I use. 1. Consistent communication. Daily notes, WhatsApp groups, quick phone calls. Don't wait for parent-teacher meetings. Keep parents updated on small wins and struggles. And 2, share strategies. If we use visuals in class, parents use them at home. If parents find a calming technique that works at home, we try it at school. Consistency is key. And 3, celebrate together. When a child makes progress, celebrate it with both the parent and the child. That builds confidence on both sides. And 4, respect each other's expertise. Parents know their child best. Teachers know the academic and social demands best. Together, that's powerful. And 5, never shame. Replace criticism with encouragement. Parents are already carrying guilt. Teachers are already carrying pressure. Shaming doesn't help anyone. I'll never forget a boy in my class who finally sat through a full maths lesson without leaving his chair. For him, that was monumental. I texted his mom immediately. He did it. He stayed the whole lesson. I am so proud. Do you know what she said back? She cried. She told me she had been praying for that moment for years. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't just his win. It wasn't just my win. It was hers too. That's the power of bridging home and school. The victories multiply. So here is what I want you to take away from this. Stop fighting each other. Parents, teachers, SNAs, therapists, we are on the same page. The child is not served when we pull in different directions. Celebrate the small steps together. Share the strategies. Protect the child's dignity. And above all, remember, these children are not projects to fix. They are people to love. And when we work together, when we bridge the gap between home and school, The small steps add up to something extraordinary. When I sit back and reflect on my journey, both as a mother and as a teacher, I can honestly say the small steps were the very bricks God used to build my child's independence. If I had waited for the big, flashy miracle, I would have missed the miracle that was unfolding in the everyday. The first picture card exchange, the first time she ate a meal without throwing it on the ground, the first day she walked into school without tears, the first uniform she put on without a fight, the first trip to the shop that didn't end in a meltdown. These were not small wins. They were God's footprints on our story. The truth is, I couldn't have done this without my faith. There were nights I cried out to God, asking Him why this was happening, asking Him if I was strong enough to raise a child with autism, asking Him if I could ever see the fruit of this very hard work. And time again, He reminded me, do not despise the day of small beginnings. That scripture became the anchor for me because parenting a child with additional needs is not about one big breakthrough. It's about thousands of small beginnings, thousands of small moments that look insignificant but are building into something eternal. I've met too many parents who later say, if only I had listened, if only I had tried earlier, if only I had not let my pride or my fear stop me. And regret hits harder than the work would have. I can tell you, there are moments I didn't like the strategies. I didn't like being told I was wrong. I didn't like professionals correcting me. But I obeyed and I was willing to learn. And now, looking at my daughter striving in university, I know it was worth it. Parents, if you hear nothing else today, hear this. Your child's survival and independence is at risk when you let your pride or feelings get in the way. This is not about you, it's about them. Teachers, I want to speak to you too. Sometimes you will feel like nothing is changing. You will go home battered, tired, bruised, emotionally drained. You will wonder if the work you're putting in is worth it. But let me remind you, the small steps are adding up. The child who flips one less chair today is building regulation. The child who stays calmer for 20 minutes instead of 10 is learning endurance. The child who finally answers you with respect is building character. And one day, years from now, that child may walk across a graduation stage. They may build a job. They may care for their siblings. And you will know the seeds you planted mattered. The Bible says in Revelation 12 verse 11 that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. This podcast is my testimony. My daughter is my testimony. My students are my testimony. And your child's story can be a testimony too. But only if you're willing to put in the work, embrace the small steps, and trust God to multiply them. So here's my challenge to every parent, every teacher, every SNA, every professional listening today. Don't despise the small. Don't wait for perfection. Don't coddle your child to smooth your own insecurities. Don't dismiss strategies because they feel too hard. Don't let pride stop you from accepting help. Instead, celebrate the tiny moments, embrace consistency, honor the process, trust the professionals God has placed in your path, and above all, trust the Lord who loves your child even more than you do. Today, when I see my daughter getting up for work, shopping for her sister, cleaning the kitchen without being asked, I know these are not random. They are the fruit of years of sweat, tears, strategies, prayers, and above all, God's grace. And I want you to know, if God could do it for us, He can do it for you too. So don't give up. Don't give in. And don't stop celebrating the small wins. Because one day, those small steps will become a testimony so powerful that you look back and say, thank you, Lord. Every meltdown, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, it was all worth it. Before we close this episode, I want to pray over you. Father, I thank you for every parent, every teacher, every carer listening right now. I thank you for the child they are standing for the child they are working for, the child they are loving through meltdowns and triumphs. Lord, give them strength for this journey. Remind them that small steps are not wasted. Remind them that you are in the details. Protect their heart from regret, pride, and discouragement, and fill them with the hope that what they are sowing today they will reap tomorrow. In Jesus' name, amen. Parents and teachers, professionals, let's all work together to build a stronger future for our children.